Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Tom Hodson. I'm a solution architect here at our data center division at Total Cable Solutions. In today's session, we're going to talk about making the case for base 8 cabling within the data center. Just as a brief reminder, this presentation is designed to be informational in nature and will be presented in a vendor-neutral fashion. Therefore, we will not be promoting any specific company's or brand's product. Now, I suspect a good number of you have probably already heard of what base 8 cabling is, but maybe at various stages of adoption or actually implementing it. So we'll go over what it actually means to be base 8 cabling and how it will impact your data center cabling design efforts and planning in the near future. We'll take a look at what you'll actually be able to reuse from your current cable plant, as well as what you will probably need that'll have to be net new. And then we'll also examine what base 8 brings to the table and if and where it may be a good fit for you. So for an overall agenda, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the evolution of the network, what it actually means to be base 8 cabling, what is driving this trend, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages, what are some of the cost differences that we need to be cognizant of, and then we'll draw some final conclusions. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, in the not-so-distant past, pretty much all connections in the data center were comprised of two fibers, a transmit and receive. And those were supporting everything from 1 gig Ethernet to 10 gig Ethernet to 1, 2, and 4 gig fiber channel. And the LC duplex connector was certainly the standard, and SFP was the king. And in recent years, the QSFP was introduced, which stands for the Quad Small Form Factor Pluggable. And this meant that 40 gig and faster speeds would then require 8 fiber connections and a new connector called the MPO. Now, most of the SAN connections still, and probably for the foreseeable future, will remain the LC duplex connector. As we fast forward to today, most data centers have quite a variety of connection types on their floor. Everything from 10 gig to 40 gig to 100 gig Ethernet, as well as 16 and 32 gig fiber channel. And this means a variety of 2 fiber LC duplex and 8 fiber MPO connections that have to be supported. So what will our networks look like in the data center tomorrow? Hard to say, but I suspect there's going to be an even wider variety of connection speeds. In addition to the current 10 gig and 40 gig, we've already seen emergence of the 25 gig and 100 gig networks. So we're going to have to be prepared to manage and implement a much more complex environment. So as we've witnessed the evolution of network speeds over the years, we can clearly see a trend as we've moved from 10 gig to 25 gig to 40 gig, 100 gig, and so on. We started out with a simple transmit and receive on 2 fibers, but really starting with the 40 gig speeds and above, we're needing to aggregate multiple fibers, usually in increments of 8, in order to achieve the faster speeds. And that's where base 8 really comes in. So what is base 8? Well, to put it quite simply, base 8 is a cabling approach that uses increments of 8 fibers to form links between servers, switches, and storage in your data center. So to better understand what base 8 is, it's helpful to have an understanding of the other cable types that are in the data center today. Starting out with base 2. These are those simple 2 fiber links that we talked about on the earlier slides. They're typically done with an LC duplex connector, have a simple cross polarity. They're very easy to deploy and understand. They can be used for home runs between equipment or from patch panels to equipment. Now, base 12 has pretty much been the standard for fiber backbones for quite some time. And it uses 12 fibers inside an MPO connector. It does have the added complexity of some different wiring methods, such as method A, B, or C. It can be more complex because of the male and female aspects of having to have alignment pins. It is very good for a fiber backbone, but it can be inefficient for patching. So that brings us to base 8. Base 8 uses the same MPO connectors, but we're only lighting up, if you will, the outer 4 fibers on the MPO connector, which is a 12 fiber connector, because we only need the 8 fibers to support it. It has the same complexities of different wiring methods, such as method A, B, and C, as well as alignment pins for male and female type connections. And it is better for a fiber backbone, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that's the case. And certainly more efficient and simpler for using for patching as well. So in your environment today, whenever you need to do a simple point-to-point connection between a server and a switch, for 10 gig links, you're typically just using an LC duplex or 2-fiber base 2 type patch cord. But for those 40 gig and 100 gig type connections between servers and switches, that's where the base 8 or 8-fiber MPO patch cords come into play. Those patch cords would be female on both sides, which means there would not be any alignment pins installed. If you were to try and use a base 12 MPO patch cord for those same QSFP connections, you pretty much are wasting 4 fibers in that cable, because again, we only need 8 fibers to form a QSFP link. Now, when we're doing structured cabling, which is what's done in most large data centers, we've got patch panels that are geographically dispersed in the computer room that are interconnected with base 12 MPO trunks. And it does a great job of supporting base 2 connections. That's where we're using a lot of those LC duplex or 2-fiber connections out to the 10 gig servers and switch ports. Now, the problems start to arise when we want to then run QSFP type fiber connections across that same base 12 fiber backbone. First of all, we're only going to use 8 of the 12 fibers in each link, so we're wasting 4 fibers, and that adds up. And then secondly, we're unable to use the same QSFP patch cord that we would have used for a home run connection directly from equipment to equipment. Instead, we need to stock or carry a male to female type patch cord in order to go from the patch panel into the equipment. And this is where base 8 can really provide you with a better fiber backbone, because it can support those 2-fiber base 2 connections out to your servers extremely well, but it also has the added advantage of being able to support QSFP connections, those 40 and 100 gig connections, across that base 8 backbone without stranding 4 fibers. So you're using all of the fibers efficiently in your backbone. And then in a true base 8 structured cabling design, your backbone cabling is actually male to male, which allows you to use the same female to female QSFP patch cords that you would use for home runs to also be used to go from the patch panel into the server. Why is this important? Well, if you start out in your environment simply doing home runs for your QSFP connections, and then as your number of QSFP connections grows and you need to put it into structured cabling, those same cables can be carried forward and be used for the patching as well. Another one of the big differences between using a base 8 versus base 12 or base 2 fiber backbone is in how the trunk cable is actually constructed. As I mentioned before, base 12 has pretty much been the standard for a number of years, in fact about 20 years now, for fiber backbones used in structured cabling, and it served us well. But with base 8, you'll notice in this illustration that a typical 96 fiber trunk with base 8 has 12 8-fiber subunits inside of it, versus base 12 has 8 12-fiber subunits. Both have similar construction in terms of the outer jacket, level of protection, and center strength members. And then for base 2 environments, this is typically accomplished by just using base 12 fiber trunk cable, which then breaks out into individual LC duplex legs on each side, which are then fed into the back of an LC to LC pass-through patch panel, which then allows you to simply use an LC patch cord on the front to connect to an LC connection on your server or device. With both base 8 and base 12 trunk construction, legacy LC duplex or base 2 connections can easily be supported through the use of patch panels or MPO cassettes. In the base 8 world, this means there would be 4 LC duplexes supported for each MPO leg. And in the base 12 world, each MPO leg can support 6 LC duplexes. One of the big differences, as mentioned before, is in the base 8 world, those MPOs would be pinned, also known as male. In the base 12 world, each MPO leg would be female, or no alignment pins would be installed. Again, the big difference being that in the base 8 world, each leg only consists of 8 fibers. So we're only sending 8 fibers into each 12 fiber MPO connector. And consequently, that's all that is needed to support the QSFP technologies today. In the base 12 world, each MPO consists of 12 fibers, and we would be sending all 12 fibers into the 12 fiber MPO connector. In situations where you are then connecting it to a QSFP connection, we're only going to use the outer 4 fibers. The inner 4 fibers would go unused and hence be wasted. So what's driving this trend towards base 8 cabling? Well, it won't come as a surprise that with the growth of hyperscale environments, the use of smart buildings, and all of the internet-connected devices that make up the Internet of Things is really driving us to have larger pipes out to the cloud, out to our core switches, and even our internal servers and storage. And as we have migrated slowly from 10 gig into the faster speeds up to tomorrow, we're starting to see a trend where we're migrating from 2 fibers into technologies of QSFP that are in increments of 8 fibers to accomplish these faster speeds. And in that same trend, that moves us from an LC duplex type connector to more of an MPO or multi-fiber connector along the ways. So for the network speeds that we have today, as well as what we expect in the near future, they all seem to be based on various flavors of 8-lane technology or QSFP technology. And this is reflected in the network port sales that we see, both today and what's forecast for tomorrow. So all the more important reason for us to create some level of standardization so that we can have reuse of that fiber cable plant to take care of the network speeds as they increase. So the bottom line is matching our fiber backbone to more closely meet the needs of QSFP connectivity is going to provide us with some better efficiencies today, as well as future-proof us for tomorrow. So let's go over some of those key advantages in using base 8 cabling. So by using a base 8 fiber backbone approach, we're not going to waste those 4 fibers when we're supporting individual QSFP connections, unlike the case with a base 12 infrastructure. And for our QSFP patch cords, which are female to female, we can use those both for home runs as well as for patching from panels to equipment in structured cabling. This provides less complexity and also saves us money. So a base 8 fiber backbone can also easily support those legacy base 2 connections, those LC connections, by using the SFP breakout cassettes. And intermixing of 10 gig, 40 gig, and 100 gig can be more easily achieved with a base 8 fiber backbone with less complexity and certainly less wasted fibers. So the main advantage of having a base 8 cable infrastructure is that it's going to allow you to better match your fiber backbone to the future connectivity needs of your network. When we look down the road at what's being produced by the transceiver manufacturers, more and more options are coming out that are based on base 8 or base 2 type technology, whether it's 40 gig, 100 gig, 200 gig, 400 gig, bidirectional, or even shortwave division multiplexing. So keep in mind also that a base 8 approach and its benefits can be achieved whether your fiber backbone is multi-mode or single mode. Now, there are a few disadvantages in using base 8 cabling that you'll want to be aware of. There's some important differences between the trunks and cassettes between base 8 and base 12 structured cabling systems. The trunks in a base 8 system are in fact pinned. In base 12 they are not. In a base 8 system the cassettes are unpinned, and in a base 12 the cassettes are in fact pinned. Because of these differences, it's not recommended that you try to intermix base 8 and base 12 cassettes in the same computer room or environment to avoid any compatibility issues. Quickly looking back at the differences in trunk construction between a base 8 and a base 12 trunk, we can see that the MPO legs on a base 8 trunk are in fact pinned, which allows them to properly mate up with a female connection in the cassettes. This is not the case with base 12, where the MPO connections are in fact unpinned, which allows them to properly mate into a pinned or male connection into its cassettes. Because of these differences, trunks from base 8 cannot plug into cassettes that are base 12, and vice versa. So as you can imagine, to truly achieve base 8 benefits in your fiber backbone, you're going to have to install some new fiber cabling, and that costs money. The good news is some of your existing patch cords will be able to be carried forward into the base 8 infrastructure, such as LC to LC patch cords, which are base 2, as well as some existing QSFP patch cords. Now, having base 12 and base 8 cable plant in the same data center can be confusing, as we just mentioned on the previous slide, because you just can't tell by simply looking at the connectors whether it is a base 8 MPO or a base 12 MPO. And legacy base 12 trunks and cassettes cannot be effectively converted into a pure base 8 infrastructure with all the benefits that we've just outlined. So what are the cost differences that we need to be aware of? Regardless if it's a base 8 or a base 12 fiber backbone, you're still technically paying for the same number of fibers. However, since base 8 only uses 8 of the 12 fibers available in an MPO connector, there's going to be more MPO connections in a base 8 fiber backbone, which translates into about 33% more MPO terminations and the expenses associated with that. This makes deploying a base 8 fiber backbone about 15% more expensive overall than a typical base 12 deployment. And again, looking back at the trunk construction of base 8 versus base 12 fiber backbones, we can see the increase of the MPO connectors that occurs on a base 8 trunk versus on a base 12. In this example, a 96 fiber trunk with base 8 would have 12 MPO connectors, and a 96 fiber base 12 trunk would just have 8 MPO connections. We touched on this before, but it's really a huge benefit. And that's because you'll be able to carry forward the same home run type patch cords or QSFP MPO patch cords, which are female to female, that you're currently using to go from equipment to equipment. You'll be able to carry those forward into a base 8 structured cabling scenario. You won't have the added expense of carrying a male to female array cord around or having to invest in more expensive tools to change gender on an MPO cable on site. This requires extra training of your personnel, extra tools, and certainly adds a level of complexity when your staff probably has better things to do. So let's go through some of the takeaways from this session. Base 8 is a great approach for new build-outs of cable plant and data centers, but avoid intermixing Base 8 and Base 12 connectivity in the same data center if at all possible. 2 and 8 link technologies are here to stay, whether it's 40 gig, 100 gig, 200 gig, or faster speeds that are expected down the pike. Base 8 is certainly ideal to support these growing hyperscale environments, and Base 8 can actually save you money in the long run by not wasting fibers across your backbone. But it will cost you about a 15% premium to have these benefits if you were to deploy a Base 8 fiber backbone today. Thank you so much for attending this session, and I hope you found it informative. If you have a chance to visit the showroom floor, be happy to field any questions you have. Myself and our Total Cable Solutions team will be at booth 503. Have a great day.